Hey guys, Michael here. Welcome to this preview clip for our patron-exclusive episode on Saving Private Ryan. To listen to the full episode, head to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes. Hope you enjoy this preview of our episode on Saving Private Ryan. Hello, patrons, and welcome to this patron-exclusive episode where we are going to talk about Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Robert Rodat, the 1998 film. If my memory serves correctly, I should have looked this up, but I'm pretty sure it's 98. I'm here with the whole team: Trisha Rand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Hello, hello.
And Alex Galleros.
Hi.
Okay, so this movie won the Battle of the War films. It was a photo finish. It was tied between Full Metal Jacket and Saving Private Ryan right up until the end. This is yet another time where I'd really like to try out a different voting system than like the first past the post thing, because I think if people could like rank their favorites and, do that thing where like, okay, well, if your number one doesn't
rank choice voting.
Yeah, I feel like it'd be
or
interesting
blind
to
voting
see
where people can't see that their movie is like one behind.
Yeah.
Does Patreon support ranked choice voting systems?
Yes.
Surprisingly, it doesn't.
Let's discuss for the next hour. Go.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so I was happy that Saving Private Ryan won, because this movie I think is probably one of my like favorite films or most memorable films, as favorite as like a war movie can be for me, where it's like I don't want to have to watch this all the time. But I think this movie lives in my head in a way that a lot of movies don't. And I think it was part of being a kid and remembering when it came out. There was a lot of hubbub around it and like, oh my God, it's the best war movie ever, and taking veterans to see it. And just there was a lot of conversation about it culturally. And I was not allowed to see it at that age. And I think I saw it kind of end of high school, early college, as I was, doing my maturing cinematic renaissance, where I was watching R-rated movies for the first time, like American Beauty and The Matrix and Apocalypse Now, all these things that I was getting exposed to. So I feel like it had been built up in my head from a younger age, and then was probably one of the first like war movies that I saw and was exposed to, besides like The Patriot by Mel Gibson, which doesn't.
Yeah. I watched that movie a lot back in the day. I was like, wow, this is good cinema.
Same screenwriter.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Is it really? Oh,
Yeah.
Mel Gibson like hacks a guy with an axe for a long time in one scene. I remember
Really
that.
does.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so yeah, so Saving Private Ryan, I feel like it's one of my favorite Spielberg films because it doesn't feel Spielberg-y, but I feel like he's using all those Spielberg-y muscles to do something different and a little out of character from his, the Jurassic Parks and the Jaws of it all, which I like. There's, the opening, the storming Normandy Beach, which is famous for being largely very accurate. The sound design, the way it's shot, there's just that sequence has been talked to death about. But what I really connect with in this movie, I think, is just the humanity given to these characters. And, we just talked about Shawshank Redemption, and I feel like there's a similar thing where there's not a ton of conversation about like morality or good. I don't know. It's these people, they just signed up to go to war, right? The big reveal at the end is that Tom Hanks is a school teacher. And I don't know, there's just something that captures the human experience at the heart of this horrific thing that humans have decided to do over and over again. And there are just these little moments throughout that I really connect with and moved me to tears. And I've always felt a weird spiritual connection with Giovanni Ribisi and like him in this movie. It's just like, yeah, I'm you. And so when he dies and he has that scene where he's like calling for his mother, and that's been set up. So lots of things I want to talk about. But those are my favorite moments in this movie, are these like quiet scenes with these characters in this extreme situation. And I love that the movie cares as much about those scenes as it does the big action scenes. So those are kind of my overall thoughts. I want to talk about structure. I think there's a similar like Apocalypse Now kind of journey thing happening here, and audience surrogate character and stuff like that. But those are kind of overall starting off thoughts. Curious to hear from you guys. Trisha, what are your thoughts on Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably the newest person here to the movie. I watched it for the first time only a couple of years ago. And despite being a big Spielberg fan, it was just one of his that I had missed. And, at the time, I think definitely knowing that I was too young for it and not wanting to push myself, hearing that it was very graphic and very difficult to watch in places, which I still find it to be. Yeah. Like there are parts of this, the D-Day invasion beach scene that I'm still just like, nope, no. I do my thing where I like look at the corner of the screen or study something else in the room instead of like actively like, because it's just hard to keep my eyes locked on that level of horror. And I think, it's got to be far and away one of the, I don't know. I just find it really astounding, those long battle sequences that sort of captured the overwhelm. Like it actually, one of the others that really works for me in that sense is the beach scene in Edge of Tomorrow, which I know is doing a lot of stuff that's a direct reference to this. And to the real life situation, obviously that is being portrayed here. So, but I think war movies tend to cut around things, like not necessarily things that are graphic, but they just disorient you more than this movie does, where I think this movie keeps you really oriented during those long sequences, and they set up clear goals for the characters. Like I know where the characters are trying to get to. I know what they're trying to accomplish. I understand what each like ebb and flow of the battle means. And even in those really small, like little skirmishes and things, I feel like I understand who's where, what's happening with each of the characters and why it matters. And that in itself is super impressive, and it keeps the tension really high. And I think that's what I remember when I think back on this movie. I'm like, yeah, I remember every little movement in this battle, or the troop movement or order or whatever, about how it unfolds. And whereas I feel like most war movies, I haven't seen a ton for the record, but when I look back on them, it's just a blur of like the battle was a blur. And this movie does a really good job of keeping those battle scenes crystal clear. Now, I will say, coming to this a little bit later, some of the 90s-ness of it all, didn't hit home quite the way that I'm sure it did for people who saw it earlier. There's some pretty corny 90s stuff in here, in the dialogue especially. And then no one needs that face transformation at the end. Like, it's just, what about a crossfade? Like, if we absolutely must, what was the problem with a crossfade? Oh, God.
It's very like Year After Titanic kind of a thing to do.
No, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it feels that way too. So there's some stuff in here where I'm just like, I came to it in the wrong, sort of place in life to appreciate it on its own terms, for some of the emotional journey of the characters. But I mean, damn if it isn't got to be one of the best war movies of all time. Actually, most of the war movies I've seen are World War II movies that were made during World War II. And those really kind of go through the blur that I'm talking about, or they're just about something totally different, like The Great Escape. So I think that this has just got to be up there, in terms of war movies that are about battle, but are also really make you feel the stakes. The scale of it is small enough that you can really understand it. And there are battle sequences, but they're just very well scaled and oriented to keep the audience in the action. I can't imagine having seen this in a theater. Did any of you guys see it in a theater? Whew, I bet it was very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been very intense. Yeah, I think the approach to the battle scenes is something I want to talk about also, because as you're saying,
big time.
There's lots of stuff to discuss there, so I'll make sure to do that. But first, Brian, tell me about Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, sort of somewhere in between for me. I didn't see it right when it came out, but I also saw it, didn't see it recently either. So I think that I saw it probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years after it came out and was like, yeah, it was really good. And then a handful of years ago, I wrote a column on it and watched it again and was definitely like, oh, really starting to appreciate like kind of what this movie's doing and like what, you know, what's going on here. And then watching it again, it's maybe only my third time watching it for this. So, you know, still feels very fresh to me. It still feels like I can really appreciate things. And yeah, I just think it's a great, you know, as a piece of entertainment, for lack of a better word, like it's just incredibly solid. It doesn't feel 3 hours to me. It feels like I'm just always so invested in it. And the, you know, as you were saying, Trisha, it's like, even when it's an action scene or a battle scene, we're not just going, welp, here's a bunch of quick cuts of blood splattering or whatever. It's like, no, I know where they're trying to get to. And like, I know what all the characters care about and I care about the characters. So it's like, I'm watching their reactions to things. And then all the dialogue scenes, the quiet scenes are beautiful, you know? So it's like, and yeah, so it's like the dialogue scenes are doing real work, and then the action scenes are also doing real work. So it doesn't feel like we have to sort of pause to do talking stuff, or we have to pause to do action stuff. It feels like the movie is always moving forward. Yeah, so I think it's really solid. But I also, you know, don't have some like massive connection to it or anything. It's just a movie that when I think about it and watch it, I'm like, yeah, good job. You made a really excellent film.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the context was when I first saw it. I think it was definitely like at home in high school at some point. And I think, you know, I think I was reading on Wikipedia, there was a time where they were actually broadcasting this movie like uncensored, like on Veterans Day, like a few years in a row, like as like a patriotic thing. And like some networks wouldn't do it because they were worried about getting, you know, fined, but nobody fined them. And there was a moment where this movie was kind of like, it's your almost like your duty, or like it's like, as an American, you should watch this movie. We were like broadcasting it on ABC as a public service on Veterans Day to remind everybody what World War II meant. It was also
the cost of freedom.
Yeah, and this movie came out like in the 90s, and the 50th anniversary of World War II was the 90s, and so I think there was a moment of looking back and remembering, and a lot of, you know, seniors who were veterans were kind of like reaching the end of their lives, and so there was a moment, I think, where it was like a World War II remembrance time, and so I think I watched it, in that context at home, and I think the things that stuck in my mind were, of course, just the incredible level of like graphic, you know, violence, you know, the just the frankness of the violence in the storming of the beach scene, and so many scenes where it's just like, oh, that's what it actually looks like when soldiers get blown apart, and we're not going to hide it or be tasteful about it. I mean, I think it is tasteful in its like respect for the truth of it, but we're not doing the movie things where we like avert your eyes. No, we're just going to show it. And I think that was really striking to me at that age. And so that's what stuck in my mind. And I didn't remember a lot rewatching it now of the rest of the story itself and the characters and those quiet moments that are now my favorite part of the movie. A lot of those quiet character scenes. So I haven't really watched it much since then because it was just like, wow, that was really intense and, incredible in the way that it shows just how horrific and insane war is, but also I don't really want to watch that again. And so it was nice to revisit it and see how much more of the movie there is besides those scenes, and experience just these lovely characters having these lovely moments together. And it's an interesting movie because I think as I grew older and watched more war movies, my favorite ones tend to be like Apocalypse Now, where it's just kind of like, we can't make meaning of this at all. Like there's no meaning to be found here. This is just madness. This is just insanity. That's the point, is like, there's no point. And, you know, the Thin Red Line has the similar kind of feeling by the end, where it's just like, what did we do all this for? What was this all for? And a World War II movie is in this different category because it's not a Korean War movie. It's not a Vietnam movie. It's about a war that reshaped the global world order and made it what it is today, and like is, you know, the good war. And so it's interesting to watch Saving Private Ryan, which both is doing the thing of showing you kind of the insanity, the absolute madness, and almost just like meaninglessness of the just carnage of this, like what, like really we're doing this. But then also like part of maybe the 90s-ness, the thing that feels a little bit like hard to put together is the kind of packaging around that insane senselessness, which is this kind of like earnest patriotism, earnest kind of like, I don't know, honor, goodness, which Apocalypse Now or Thin Red Line aren't necessarily trying to put together with the senselessness. So it's a really interesting thing this movie is trying to do, and it's difficult to put those things together and have it, to our cynical minds, you know, age well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because of the way we touched on this when we were talking about Inglourious Bastards, but it's interesting the way that World War II, particularly out of all the wars that there ever were and movies about wars that there ever were, World War II kind of has this place in history where, because of the way that we have evaluated it through a historical lens, there's a lot of complicated history involved in World War II, by the way. But as it turned out, like for example, the Allies didn't know the Holocaust was going on until we got in there. And so the way that we have come to view World War II in the way that you're talking about, Alex, as like being a good war where our cause actually was just and like the good guys won and stuff. I think that there's a really hard line that's been drawn in cinematic history where it's like, not that there wasn't atrocity left and right on the battlefields but that there's a less complicated way that movie is often, that war is often portrayed in film, because the bad guys were real bad.
Right. Like,
so
we all agree the bad guys were bad.
Bad guys, real bad. And so I think it's interesting, the other wars that you're mentioning, and even war movies about recent wars, like thinking about, Hurt Locker, and stuff like that. It's like our modern sensibilities demand a certain level of nuance in the way that those wars are being portrayed and explored. And I'm not saying that there isn't some nuance in Saving Private Ryan, but just that because it is about World War II and because there is sort of this core of, I don't know, like a moral center to the way that war is portrayed. Like, I think that it is interesting, the way that we kind of demand, okay, well, what about the humans on the other side of the war in a lot of our modern war movies? There's not that level of real look at the Nazi characters here.
Right.
Nor has there really ever been in film, to be clear. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying it's something that you only get out of a World War II movie, even one like this, that I do think is really well made.
Hope you guys enjoyed this preview clip of our episode on Saving Private Ryan. To listen to the full episode and continue the conversation, head over to the Beyond the Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes.